Please welcome Harish Iyer to QueerTWENTY, the cohort of 2021. Harish is a diversity, equity and inclusion champion, a motivational speaker, a gender and sexuality trainer for non-profits, a renowned columnist, a budding author, and currently the head of DE&I at Axis Bank. Thank you so much, Harish, for joining us.
It's really, really my pleasure. Thank you.
So, Harish, your work towards several marginalized communities has often been celebrated. So, do you see yourself as a role model, and what would you like to do more?
Well, I don't see myself as a role model, but I do understand the responsibility that it takes when you have so many dreams and aspirations attached to you. I do understand the onus that I will have to take on myself, but at the same time not be afraid to take steps which could seem a little difficult, which could seem a little controversial at times. To not be deterred by the noise around you, and to ensure that your voice and the voice of those who are different, the voice of those who are smaller in number, is not lost in the cacophony of the loud orchestra that plays around us, is a responsibility. And to be innovative and to be attentive is also a responsibility which I am quite aware of and I'm quite unafraid of.
So, when you talk about this responsibility that you are aware that you have, and as you said, you are somewhat unafraid to do what needs to be done, in that sense, if I ask you the question that do you consider yourself privileged and how do you pay it forward, what would you say?
I do consider myself privileged. The acknowledgement of the fact that we have some privilege is the first level in actually grounding yourself. To be unaware of your privileges would lead to arrogance. To be aware of your privileges, the fact that I have a voice and many a times I have a choice that I have to exercise, is the grounding ways that we need to start with. So anyone who is a little known, anyone who has more eyes and hopes pinned on you, you need to begin with acknowledgement of privilege. And that's something that I do as my first step towards anything. We live in a largely unequal world. We live in a largely inequitable world. And for us to build equity, for us to create a level playing field, we need to understand that how much privilege we are, and what are those privileges that we could work towards extending, because there's some people who have too much and there are so many who have nothing at all, and that's something that we need to be aware of. And the first thing is with self-reflection.
So Harish, what are some things that you are currently undertaking which takes up a lot of your time, a lot of your passion, and where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Presently, I work as the Diversity, Equity and Inclusion Head at Axis Bank, which I do professionally. Personally, I'm still interested, still continuing to do the things that I used to do even before joining Axis. Axis is basically a very new project that I've undertaken. So I just joined in March of 2021. This is my first corporate stint. But before this, prior to this, and in continuation, I take distress calls from fellow survivors of child sexual abuse and people who are in, who have a different sexuality or gender, who call and write into me. So that's something that I'm undertaking personally. Beyond that, I'm also looking at filing a petition in the Supreme Court or the High Court. I've yet to decide my legal strategy on getting in a non-discrimination, a discrimination for non-discrimination of LGBTQ people, a petition for non-discrimination of LGBTQ people. I think we need to have non-discrimination legislation for LGBTQ people.
Since you have been a public advocate and on a lot of public forums you have spoken openly, as you said, you still take distress calls. As a survivor of child abuse yourself, how does one come to terms and heal? How does someone get how does one stop that trauma from affecting their subsequent relationships? How did you heal?
Well, I know that the most ideal answer would be that there is 100% healing. There is no 100% healing. There is no overcoming from what has happened to you. There's nothing like overcoming. There is acknowledgement. Acknowledgement of the truth that something bad has happened to you. An acknowledgement of the truth that it might be a defining moment in your life where you had to take 10 steps back, but you are the God of your story. You define your story. You write your story. So yes, I did have a defining moment in my life where I was sexually assaulted for 11 years of my life, from the age of 7 to the age of 18. It did add a few aspects to my life in terms of me getting scared of men, me being phobic of public places, scared of public speaking, but these negatives that emerged also became my strongest positives, because many a times when you're pushed to a point that you can't expand yourself, the energy that you generate when you apply forces on pushing somebody to a corner, the energy that you have, the anger, the frustration, when the pressure releases a little bit, you will not jump, you will bounce back. You'll reverberate with that energy, because we all face challenges in our lives, okay? And for each one of us, our pain is more magnificent than another person's. But the truth is that that the same pain that pushes you down, the same story that pushed you down and carved you down, can be the reason why you emerge as one of the most vociferous people, not just for yourself, but for others as well. So I think that you should always be scared of pushing someone so much that the person has no low to go. I mean, you can't go low further. You can't lower yourself further because you've been pushed that deeply. Because when you come up, you will not simply jump, you will pounce. And that's precisely what happened to me. So yes, I am a survivor of child sexual abuse, and it's a part of my story. I acknowledge that it's a part of my story, but I'm not defined by it. But I've used it to create the juice and the news of what I am today.
Like a springboard.
Yes, like a springboard.
Along similar lines, maybe not same, but similar lines, as you said that once somebody is pushed and pushed and pushed and they have nowhere to go, they have no choice but to just, pounce. Do you think that also would apply to the internalized homophobia that a lot of Indians, not a lot, most Indians go through because of our complete lack of representation of the LGBTQ community in mainstream media? Do you think that a lot of Indians have this, like, what would you say, how does somebody come to terms with that, the internalized homophobia that they grow up with?
I think not just Indians, people all across the world face this. The fear of the different, because we see life in monolithic structures, we see life in monochromes. But it is not just the fear of homosexuals or bisexuals or transgender persons. It is the fear of the other, the fear of someone being different. And we all fear someone being different. We always fear the one who comes first in the class, because you have something to compete with. We don't fear the ones who are mediocre in class. We don't fear the ones who are failing in class. You fear the ones who come first in class because there's some competition, right? So the fear of the other, the fear of this beyond the norm category, is what drives everybody. So and this is a global phenomena. And when it comes to people's gender and sexuality or gender expressions, it becomes more profound. And it is many a times internalized as well, and especially because you don't accept yourself. Like I remember, I should acknowledge that there was a time when I was a transphobe, when I didn't have a term for it, but there was a time where I would say that, I'm a gay man. I don't want to stand with a few people who are very feminine, because I don't want to get outed as a gay man. So internalized homophobia is there in everybody, in many people. Many people who are now advocates also had, many of them I know personally, also had internalized homophobia. This was internalized femphobia, right? Not to be associated with someone feminine because I will get outed. But the truth is that the embracing of your complete self takes time. It takes education. So even when I know that I'm speaking to homophobes, I know that possibly I'm speaking to closet homosexuals.
So is there a framework which you already mentioned, it takes time, it takes education, but then if I ask you for a framework, that what would be a structure where there's a structural change where inclusion is at the heart of everything, and that this thing that everybody globally it has this sort of internalized homophobia, slowly can just not be a part of mainstream society anymore?
I think awareness. People don't know the difference. See, it's fairly a new phenomena that people are speaking candidly about sex, sexuality, and gender. If you ask people, I'm 42. If you ask people in my generation, I sound very old when I say my generation, but yeah, people who are 42, around 35 and plus, I see that many people don't know the difference between sex, sexuality, and gender, because it was not even a common conversation to speak about these things. I think these should be taught in schools and colleges, in corporates, where people should know about what is sex, what is sexuality, what is gender, from a scientific standpoint, okay, and then from a social standpoint, on how you're supposed to deal with people who are a little different. And the onus of inclusion lies on those who are included, not on those who are excluded. So this should be taught to the heterosexual populace and not teach the LGBT populace that, this is the way you have to react when you meet a heterosexual person. No. The heterosexuals, the cisgender people have to learn how they are supposed to react when they meet LGBTQ people. And it happens more than anything. It happens through habit. The more you interact, more people who are coming out. Previously there used to be like in the media, there were like 3 or 4 people who used to be constantly speaking. I used to be one of them, and I practically was there. I never said no for a media interview, so I practically ended up being in every second or every third media interview was mine. But now you have more faces. You don't have one face, because the difficulty in having 1 or 2 faces only is that also you get typecast. You think that if you don't believe in Harish's political view or any other view, you start assuming that every queer person is like me, which is wrong. Also, I'm vegan. I might be advocating against non-vegetarianism at some point. So you'll think that everyone is like me, but no, we are not a monolith. There are different forms of LGBTQ people, and to recognize that becomes incredibly important. And now you have many more voices from the LGBTQ community. It should not be the onus of everyone to educate everyone, but those who can have the courage and the patience, more than the courage, the patience to listen to ignorant people asking questions and answering those, should step up and speak. Not everyone can do it, and it should not be expected of everyone to do it, but those who can should step up and do it, so that people have live examples of people who can come and ask questions and get answered, and not with the fear, if I ask this question, will this person pounce on me, right? And if people who can answer these questions without getting pissed off should come up and answer, so that we are able to have a conversation with people who can say the wrong things also. And it's important that even LGBTQ people educate themselves, because like 20 years before, we knew what gender pronouns were, but it was not a norm to use those. 20 years before, we possibly knew about few types. We knew, but we never had so many people coming out and speaking about different types of gender. Now the world is increasing, so it also becomes the responsibility of public-facing people is to educate themselves. So they'll also make mistakes, but educate themselves and get better as well.
When you talk about the queer community and when you talk about acceptance and inclusion, what about within the queer community? What do you think, how inclusive is the community within itself? Do you think that women or members from backward castes or specific ethnicities, do they all get equal representation?
We don't know. The same challenges that exist in the real world, because queer people are a subset of the same society. We don't come from Mars or Uranus, okay? We come from the same world that the other people are in. So the same fallacies of the outside world is within the queer community as well. So if our queer people, is there no Islamophobia in the queer community? Of course there is. Is there no casteism? I am a blatant example. I had put up a matrimonial ad which said, my mother, in fact, put up, she was looking for a groom for me, and we thought it was there, so we wrote caste no bar, but Iyer preferred. And it was my grandmother who was there in the room, who had come in, who had said, ladka ya ladki farak nahi padta, bas Iyer hona chahiye. Okay, and we thought that it was funny to put something like that, without realizing that it was not my space to speak, to joke about something which was not my lived reality, which was not which was not something I went through, and I was rightfully called out for that. Okay, and so forget other people. I mean, that's why I said the responsibility is also on us to constantly reinvent and educate ourselves. So yes, that was wrong. So there is casteism that exists in the queer community. There is jingoism that exists in the queer community. There is all sorts of people expecting piety out of queer people. Like, oh, if you're queer means you will have no fallacies. You'll be like, perfect. No, I mean, I think environment, the queer environment is as good and as toxic as the outside world. And the same challenges exist here also. We are no different. And even within the queer community, there is misogyny. People who are feminine, some people look down upon people who are feminine, men who are feminine also. There are challenges even within the queer community. There is misogyny within the queer community. So there's everything that happens outside, it happens within also. Probably of varying degrees, You can't quantify and put a number because much of it is submerged also, and it gets lost in the larger narrative of our rights, but it does happen.
Thank you for such a candid answer, Harish. Switching tracks just a bit, I know that you just said that you are a fresh entrant to the corporate world, but then do you think that your experience as an activist has informed your worldview enough for you to make change happen in corporate India?
Yes, my experience as an activist did inform me in fact, that's precisely the role that I play. And that's why if there is a challenge, I take it on myself and I say, I'm responsible for this, So yes, because all my activism years, I have stood up and spoken up, I've been trying to be unafraid of the things that I hold close to my heart. Many a times seen an outcry of public criticism also for that. So I faced the wrath of people as well, which is the matrimonial ad that I spoke about, and various other junctures. I've experienced challenges, but it becomes important for us. It's important for us to take our whole self that we have had in the world outside the corporate world, in my activism world. What was I doing outside? I was looking for people who have been underrepresented, who have been challenged, and that's precisely what I'm doing in the corporate world also. What the skills that were needed were understanding and empathy. The same skills are needed in the corporate world also. So I think that it's important. None of your experiences go waste, and it's important that corporates also realize that that the experience of you, not just the courses you have done, that is important, but also the experience of what you bring, your life experience, brings a worth of information into the corporate space. It brings in a mindset in the corporate space which could be conducive for growth of so many people.
So, as a final question, staying with the corporate space, what are 3 immediate interventions that you are looking out for?
In the corporate space, there are many things to be done, and since this video is going to be stored for posterity, and let me not speak only about the immediate things. I think that it's an evolving document. Okay, inclusion is not a stationary document. It's not just a policy stuck in time. Society is a changing phenomena. Society is not something that's static. So our policies cannot be static. We have to move with the changing times. And the first thing that you need to do is the acknowledgement of what doesn't exist, that we don't live in an equal space, that what doesn't exist, to acknowledge all of that, whether it comes to persons with disability, whether it comes to LGBTQ people, whether it comes to women who are so underrepresented in the corporate space. Our female labor force is even below that of Saudi Arabia, right? So acknowledging that, being vigilant of that, taking control of the numbers within, and then building a mindset for each one of those, whether it's LGBTQ, whether it's PWD, whether it's women, to build the base for each one of these becomes important. First, understand that we live in an unequal world, then recognize what are the areas where we need to work, and then start building, and then take the step. There will never ever be a time when people will be completely aligned to the overall thought, or you'll be completely so perfect that there will be no mistakes. Okay, and there will be call outs, there will be challenges. You might train people, train people, but still it's about the mindset and society to change, even within organizations, will take a lot of time. So give yourself, don't be deterred, don't pull back your intentions because of that. Let there be. You can't promise that you'll only pass. There will be failures. Learn from those failures. Make it even better. There'll never be a time when you'll be totally perfect. Make it better, but don't. But be focused on that ground. I think many corporates get scared about a public backlash if something goes wrong, and then they pull out advertisements and they pull out policies. Don't do that. I mean, if you're there, yes, something can go wrong, but if something goes right, imagine that you will have so many communities thanking you for that. So start with it, however small it may be, whatever challenges it may be. Only when you go to the market and you start working on it will there be more challenges that will reveal itself on its face. Start small, but start, and as you learn, better yourself. But to deny a community, any community, policies and practices and a culture of equity, just because you're afraid to take the first step, you're afraid of failures, is the most cowardly thing to do. So yes, there will be mistakes. Yes, you might have to hang your head in shame sometimes, but you will rise like a phoenix. So be at it.
That's an amazing line to end on. Thank you so much, Harish. Thank you for all the insights, and thank you for being a part of QueerTWENTY, the cohort of 2021.
Thank you so much.